Okay, it's been quite a couple of days. It was a Mataquac, somewhere else, all over the place, around Fredericton, and it reminds me of the year 2008. That's when I first moved here, this place. Well, time flies. And I was in and out, and it looks like I'm doing the same thing now. But it's different. We don't know, the public don't know what's going on, which I've been warning the public for the past 2 months, even earlier, to get ready for the huge flood because of the clear cutting. The media don't cover it. Communicate, it's funny, they had Rogers, they had a news conference, and I don't know what it was. Rogers TV show up there, so they want to get ready. They let them in, but Communication New Brunswick don't want no blogger in, especially this is, like there's no communication. Nobody knows what's going on. A lot of people coming to me and say, "Oh, Charles, did you know the flood level is equal to last year?" "Oh, Charles, is it good? You think it's worse than last year?" There's no communication. Nobody knows what's going on. There's no talk shows. There's no scanners. You hear a lot of sirens going on. Let's see if they have the firemen, they used to have something online. I never check. I just gave up there a couple of days ago. Where is it? Fredericton Fire. Which I'm not condemning the firemen here, just communication. That's what I'm looking for. And broadcast, okay, what does it say? Does it say online or offline? I'm sorry. In transition, I don't know what that means, in transition, but anyway, I haven't put it on. There's no communication. And like I said, I just seen 4 police cruisers rush by. We don't know. So the media, I don't believe the media is asking really tough question. Bruce Frisko behind me, taking the place of Steve Murphy. He's going to interview the Premier. I wonder if they're going to talk about clear cutting. I haven't watched it yet. Let's see.
Well, it is a tiresome and troubling tradition for the great many New Brunswickers who live along the St. John River and its tributaries. They are, of course, among the most beautiful and picturesque places in the whole country, but at this time of year...
Plus, I want to get out of here. I want to go back out.
For living there.
The election is tonight. Prince Edward Island.
Amounts of water work their way through
the hockey
system,
game.
rushing to the Bay of Fundy.
I like to watch the 7th game, but I want to go out too. I want to see what's going on.
And as Kaylin mentioned, there is little comfort in the forecast with more rain for the rest of the week. At this point, about the best thing that can be said is that the flooding does not appear to be as bad as it was last year in some areas. And of course, last year's flooding was the worst in 50 years. Joining us tonight with his thoughts on this year's flood season, we are pleased to welcome the Premier of New Brunswick, Blaine Higgs. Mr. Premier, thanks for joining us tonight.
You're very welcome, Bruce. Good evening.
I know you've been closely involved with the flood response so far. What's your assessment of the situation right now?
Well, yes, we've had a lot of people very, very closely involved, and certainly our emergency measures group have been on top of this from the beginning and projecting the rise as we've seen.
Projecting the rise as we see. Never once have I heard them said there's a lot of clear cutting that's going on. We should be beware.
Throughout the communities, we've had a lot of help, from not only our organization and volunteers and firefighters and police and our EMO group, but we've had the military involved as well. So we've had been proactively, sheltering homes and building up sandbag fortresses and getting ready for a flood situation, which a day or two ago we thought was going to be less than last year, or at least significantly less, and that's kind of changed a bit.
Oh yeah.
I was looking at the snow map earlier today, and I noticed there was still a lot of snow to melt up north there.
There is, and the cooler nights certainly helped us for quite a while as we were seeing that, but now we're getting heavy rains, and the last heavy rain in the last 24 hours has made a difference. Fredericton had stabilized, let's say 24 hours ago, and then we had about maybe 15 hours or 16 hours of heavy rain. and we've seen that now. We've gone
Rain,
back up here
rain,
and
rain,
reaching
rain.
levels that we're at or exceeding last year's.
Are you any closer now to declaring a state of emergency?
Well, I don't think so at this stage. Certainly talking with the officials, we're doing everything we can. I mean, I was very pleased. The federal government authorized full support from not only the military.
Irving will fly down the media in a helicopter
and
to
we
go
have,
over the
we have
floods.
many officials on site working at our different regional centers, but out in the field, helping communities shore up their properties. We are dealing with this in each area and following the wave down the river as we've seen it. And we have about 240 of the military forces on site in different communities, and they're being a tremendous help. They're really being very, very engaging in every way.
Is that 240 enough, or would you need more troops, do you think?
Well, it'll depend on what we see. Just listening to the forecast and the rain that's continuing to come, it'll depend how significant that is. Right now, we are meeting the demands throughout the river system in each community, and as the wave goes through, I mean, that may be up or down, but they're very mobile, to take their crew and their different platoons and move them to the sites that are needed, and they've been doing just that. So it's been working well, but it's a serious situation, and it equals last year.
Did you hesitate to bring in the Army at all? I know this was kind of a political issue for Brian Gallant last year. He refused help, but of course, some of even your members thought he should have taken that military help last year.
Well, no, I didn't hesitate actually, because the forecast that we saw, we have mapped those out over 5 days.
It's going to be like this next year. It's going to be like this the year after. It's going to be like this again because of the clear cutting.
To the officials, we put in an official application about a week ago to the counterpart federally, the public safety.
Because it's just brainwashing the public.
Office,
rain.
And they responded very quickly. Within about 48 hours, I was talking to the Prime Minister, and he arranged full support of the situation with whatever help we needed. And within that next day, we had people doing the reconnaissance missions throughout the region, talking to our EMO officials, and the day after that, we had people on the ground in the different communities. So now the time to get out in front of emergency is before it actually happens, because it takes 3 or 4 days to staff up and get moving. So with any emergency procedures, whether my former career, we had to react in advance, not kind of wait for the situation, but try to get out and ahead of it.
Let's try to look ahead to when things dry out and get better, and then the cleanup and recovery. Will you be seeking aid from Ottawa to help with that?
Well, certainly.
What kind of question is that anyway?
Reach the threshold for disaster relief.
Steve, where are you?
I'm very confident of that at this stage.
Oh.
So there will be a big assessment process. We are setting up now the ability for homeowners to make their applications for damage, and so we can visit those sites and do the assessments. And we will be looking at whatever cleanup efforts are required to not walk away from the situation once it's over, but to get people back to normal as quickly as we can, and to assess, this is the second year in a row, where we go from here. Because at some point you have to say, I have to think differently about maybe my property, how I protect it, where I live, how high it is. Because the one in 100-year storms aren't coming every 100 years anymore.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because you told our reporter Jessica Ng the other day that residents can't expect to continue to get provincial aid if they keep rebuilding in the same areas that are prone to flooding. It almost sounds like you're drawing a
clear cutting.
Well, I think it's for their own protection, as well as to communities to say, let's look at
Steve, where are you?
Providing building permits for future, so we're not continuing to get into this situation. But then let's look at where we have low-lying areas that have been a consistent concern this year, last year, and maybe even years that aren't so significant as this term right now. But we can't keep doing the same thing. We can't just keep rebuilding on the same spot. We have to put in mitigation efforts, both in the construction, the elevation, and in the site itself.
Realistically, is there anything the province could do to limit flood damage, short of moving
clear cutting
tens of thousands of people to higher ground? Is there anything we can do to prevent this?
Well, You know, it's interesting thinking about what has actually changed, and so we need to understand that very clearly. I know our climate is different. We're all recognizing that and mitigating those efforts with our plans to reduce emissions. But in the short term, you know, you think about our bottleneck right here is through the reversing falls in St. John.
Right.
And once we exceed that limitation, and right now at the dam in Mactaquac, we're exceeding it by about double what the reversing falls will actually pass. And of course that fluctuates with the tide levels. So do we have opportunities there to build any sort of spillway, to do anything more significant? Because if this is an ongoing issue, which, you know, there would be indications it may be,
Yes!
we have to really look and be innovative here about the mitigation efforts.
All right, I want to thank you so much for joining us tonight, Mr. Premier.
You're very welcome, Bruce. Have a good evening.
You too. New Brunswick Premier Blaine Higgs joining us.
Bruce. Why? It's simple. It's simple. And then he mentioned last month that they were looking at the Forestry Act to let the Irvings and big companies to cut more wood. It's the clear cutting. Not one goddamn question about clear cutting from the media. Why do I get involved in these things? Why?